Welcome to today's explainer. As a psychologist, I see folks all the time who think of anger as just a bad mood or maybe a fleeting feeling that'll just pass. But today, we're doing something different. I want to guide you through the startling physiological realities of anger. We're going to look at exactly what happens under your skin when you lose your temper. And more importantly, I'm going to equip you with the clinical tools you need to take back control and regain your emotional freedom. Here is our treatment plan for today's explainer. We'll start by uncovering the chemical chaos of anger, look at the resulting hormonal imbalance, clear up some really harmful coping myths, and then finish up with a step-by-step cognitive behavioral treatment plan. Oh, and stick around for the 15-second antidote at the end. It's a real game changer. All right, part one, the chemical chaos within, or unmasking the physiological hazard of rage. Let's just bust a major myth right off the bat. Anger is not just an emotion. It is actually a severe, full-body physiological event. It impacts your physical health, your wealth, your relationships, literally everything. Look at the precise biology of what happens during a temper tantrum. The moment you get angry, your adrenal glands act like a breached dam. They flood your entire bloodstream with two incredibly powerful stress hormones, cortisol and epinephrine. It's basically your body pulling the emergency fire alarm. This chemical flood triggers an immediate drastic spike in your blood pressure and severely disrupts healthy circulation. You are putting immense, dangerous pressure on your entire cardiovascular system. Now, if this chemical chaos happens once in a blue moon, your body recovers. But if you're chronically angry, you are maintaining a highly toxic internal environment. You're actively putting yourself at long-term risk for elevated blood pressure, an increased risk of diabetes, and a severely compromised immune system. And honestly, perhaps the most frustrating part is that this massive stress cascade suppresses your pineal gland's ability to secrete melatonin. So that chronic anger is quite literally stealing your sleep and causing severe insomnia. Moving right along to part two, the hormonal imbalance. This is where we silence your body's beautiful orchestra. It's fascinating because anger doesn't just add bad chemicals, it actually robs you of the good ones. Look at our four primary dose chemicals here. Think of these as the beautiful orchestra your body needs to thrive, but the heavy metal of anger's stress hormones, it completely drowns them out. Look at dopamine, your motivation chemical. When you're chronically angry, dopamine fluctuates wildly, which can push you toward deep depression or unhealthy addictions. Oxytocin, the love and bonding chemical, gets completely blocked, leaving you feeling isolated. Serotonin, which is your anchor for internal peace, is replaced by this inner turbulence. And your endorphins, your body's natural pain management system, are suppressed, leaving you incredibly vulnerable to physical and mental pain. So the absolute crucial point you need to take away from this is that chronic anger isn't just a bad habit, right? It is a literal chemical blockade. When you hold on to rage, you are biologically preventing yourself from experiencing true happiness and human connection. Let's look at part three, harmful coping myths. These are the dangerous home remedies we really need to avoid. Before I give you the actual clinical cure, we have to talk about what not to do. People mistakenly use all sorts of tricks to manage their volatility, but there are three major traps you must avoid at all costs. First, do not suppress your anger. Pushing it down doesn't make it disappear. It just turns all that chemical damage inward, tearing you up from the inside out. Second, never justify your outbursts. Telling yourself, well, I had to yell to get things done, totally prevents you from actually growing. And third, please abandon the toxic myth that anger is a good leadership tool. Using rage to motivate your employees or your kids is incredibly destructive. It all really comes down to this. The myth tells us that anger solves problems and gets results. But as a clinician, I can tell you the absolute fact. Even if an angry outburst seems to fix an immediate, short-term logistical problem, the catastrophic cost to your biological health and your vital relationships is never, ever worth the trade. All right, part four, your step-by-step treatment. Let's dig into some cognitive behavioral tools for emotional freedom. So if we can't suppress it and we shouldn't justify it, what do we actually do? Well, here is your prescription. We're going to use a scientifically grounded three-step cognitive behavioral approach. It starts with pure self-awareness, moves into psychological reframing, and ends with a fundamental shift in how you view the people around you. Step one is identifying your triggers. I actually treated a patient once whose biggest trigger was walking through the front door after a long day at work to find his kids misbehaving. He would just explode. The treatment wasn't to ignore the kids, it was to pre-plan. He started mentally rehearsing his response during his drive home. He made a strict rule: walk in, smile, and physically hug the kids before addressing any misbehavior. By identifying that specific trigger and planning an alternative behavior, he completely transformed his home dynamic. Step 2 is a brilliant clinical tool called cognitive reappraisal. Sounds complex, but it simply means rewriting the immediate story your brain invents when you feel wronged. You know how our brains love to jump to malicious conclusions? Well, reappraisal forces you to pause and actively invent a narrative that fosters compassion instead of hostility. Think about this profound realization. I heard about a furious father driving his son to school. They get stuck in traffic because a rickshaw driver is blocking the road to pick up passengers. The dad is screaming, blood pressure is soaring, but his young son sitting next to him just gently says, "Papa, maybe he's just trying to get those fares so he can feed his kids today." Wow. In that single moment of cognitive reappraisal, the father's rage instantly melted into tears of compassion. He changed the story, and he completely healed his own anger. Step 3 requires us to take a really hard look in the mirror at our own sense of entitlement. When we feel entitled to perfect obedience from our spouse or a team or our kids, we erupt when they inevitably mess up. But think about it. We rarely yell at a boss or an elder who makes a mistake. Why? Because of inherent respect. We excuse their flaws. The reality is, we only unleash anger on those we feel entitled to control. So the ultimate antidote to that toxic entitlement is actively cultivating deep gratitude. When you start practicing genuine gratitude and respect for the people closest to you, the very sources of your anger just naturally dissolve. You literally cannot hold genuine gratitude and explosive rage in your mind at the exact same time. Finally, part 5, the 15-second antidote, clinically known as attention redeployment. So, what do you do when the trigger has already been pulled? The cortisol is already flooding your system. Well, the magic number here is 15. Just 15 seconds is all it takes to completely alter your body's chemical response to a stressful trigger. Here is your 15-second protocol. The absolute second you feel that anger rising, defer your reaction. I'm not saying suppress it, I'm saying hit pause. Spend the next 15 seconds strictly observing your own biology. Notice your breathing getting shallow. Feel your heart rate spiking. Observe the heat in your face or your fists clenching. You are redeploying your attention away from the person making you mad and focusing it entirely on your own physical sensations. And the data on this is just wild. If you react at second 1, you're going to express 100% of that volatile anger. But clinical observation shows us that if you simply wait out those 15 seconds of internal observation, your urge to explode drops by 75%. You are left with just 25% expression, which practically guarantees your eventual response is calm, measured, and fundamentally healthy. You now understand the science behind this chemical chaos, and you've got the cognitive tools to reframe your reality. So as we wrap up today's explainer, I want to leave you with this final thought. Moving forward, are you going to let cortisol and epinephrine dictate your story, or will you use gratitude and compassion to take back the pen?